a lot of people actually wrote us off, saying that this is impossible, you just couldn't do it.
All we had was just a dream, our guts, our naivety, and our passion.
If we have a vision, if we want to push ahead, something magical can be achieved.
So from there, it's history. It's just a grand story.
It's a story of a changing country, an inspired community, and it's a story that began with a tragedy.
I was a medical resident at Toronto Western at the time, so I remember that was probably around 1978. I would say over the course of a year, I must have visited at least 5 to 6 different nursing homes in downtown Toronto.
What the young doctor discovered as he made the rounds of nursing homes was heartbreaking. A growing number of elderly Chinese were scattered throughout the system. In effect, they were warehoused, alone, and forgotten.
Isolated, single, and suffer in institutions or nursing homes that do not understand their language or their culture. They felt so horribly treated that they often ask me, Dr. Wong, can you help me kill myself?
I feel pretty tired, deadly tired sometimes. Even now, I lose 5 pounds. Don't get old. Stay young all the time.
Their plight was in part the legacy of racist immigration policies that had torn families apart.
They arrived in the early days. They have been in Canada for 50, 60, or even 70 years. Most of them, they were in their 80s, some were 90s. Most of them were actually either bachelors or they were widowed. They did not have relatives. They did not have children, and I think that most of this situation is because of the head tax situation, the Chinese Exclusion Act, so that the isolated seniors in Canada, they were not able to get their loved ones to come over to Canada to join them because of the hardship imposed by the racist legislations. These were the people who built Canada, who pioneered their way in Canada, but on the other hand, at the end of the day, they were lonely.
But the responsibility to the seniors who are here before us, the generations who are the pioneers, who built up this country, great Canada, the Chinese seniors.
Joe Ng was a young social worker at Mount Sinai Hospital, and he saw firsthand that same disturbing trend.
They built the building blocks, they built the railroad. So we owe it to them. So it's an ethical challenge and something that is impossible to say no to.
The mainstream nursing homes were simply not able to deal with the growing number of Chinese residents. The language barrier meant that nurses didn't understand what residents were saying. The food was unfamiliar, and even the best intentions could not bridge the cultural divide.
So there is a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of things that they think are absolutely prohibited in Chinese culture, particularly in the seniors' mind, because of the misunderstanding, because of not serving them in a culturally appropriate way. So in the Chinese culture, Chinese seniors almost never drink ice water or water with ice. They want either warm water or boiling water. And when they were sick, when they had a cold, they don't want any chicken soup.
Dr. Wong went on to establish his practice and his career, but the experience would haunt him.
And I did not act on it until 1987, almost 10 years later.
And when he did act, he drew on his experience, the contacts and friends he had met as a crusader for social justice.
It all started with the Po people. The Po people crisis in the late 1970s that happened in South China Sea really moved me greatly. So we organized ourselves into a group called Action Committee for Refugees from Southeast Asia. And because I was the one who was the most emotional, I shouted the loudest, I yelled the loudest, and everybody said, hey, you be the chair or you be the coordinator. I said, oh, no problem, I will take it up.
That was the beginning. Dr. Wong and his band of volunteers would go on to fight other campaigns. Protesting a racist television report that accused Chinese students of taking over a university. Battling for compensation for victims of the head tax. In effect, they became crusaders for social justice.
And our credibility within the community also increased with our work. And by 1987, after joining the United Way as a trustee of the board for 5 to 6 years, I remember the commitment that I made to the seniors and to myself at that time, that we need to build a home for the aged Chinese Canadian seniors who require culturally and language appropriate services. So in 1987, one of the cold February nights, I invited a lot of friends to come together in this particular basement to talk about the idea of building a nursing home for Chinese Canadian seniors.
So when Joseph starts saying, I have an idea, then we all come and start, being part of this initial group and then when he presented the idea, I mean, there was virtually no dissent.
But it's one thing to have a dream. The hard part is making it come true in the face of indifference and outright opposition.
There are people who, are not necessarily supporting you, but worse, they might be actually, the naysayers and say, look, come on, forget it. I mean, there are all kinds of nursing homes out there. Why bother? All right, let the government take care of them.
In 1987, Dr. Joseph Wong called an historic meeting in his basement one cold winter night. He brought together a small group. They were fellow activists who had a history of working together.
I think at that meeting in the basement, what moved me, and the only thing I could remember, is the stories and how some of these seniors are being neglected. In the sense that these become sort of personal images that last and stay with you, and saying, why should someone, it could be my parents, it could be someone else, being left to die in such an undignified way.
Dr. Wong put a bold idea on the table. He said that Chinese Canadians needed an institution to take care of their growing number of seniors. It was, he declared, their duty to build one.
And we learned quickly that you cannot rely on the government, with due respect to them, to do things for the community. You have to rely on yourself. We have to be self-reliant.
Back to that basement meeting when we sort of say, yes, let's do this. And I think Dr. Joseph threw out some number that to me then it was unattainable. We have never done such huge fundraising campaign.
To start with, none of us is wealthy. None of us is a millionaire, billionaire, or parents who are, that we can bankroll this and say, look, okay, I'm going to throw down $200,000 or $500,000 seed money and to get this started. We have to start from scratch, I think. Nickel and dime everything.
For those years, it's quite tough, actually. When the committee first formed, for the first 3 to 4 years, there was no office because we started from $0. So our home became the office and everybody in and out. They have meetings early in the morning, sometimes noon, and all the way up to midnight. One time I have to cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the volunteers on the same day. Mind you, the Chinese community is not necessarily united in that things.
You know, there are always detractors.
I still remember as I walked out from the Scarborough Town Center, I have a couple of my good friends came forward to talk to me and saying that, why are you helping them? We don't want a nursing home in Scarborough. We want a nursing home somewhere else. And I said, if not Scarborough, where should we be? Then we became unfriended for a while.
I guess at that point, I think in, 20-some years ago, we were much younger and we were much bolder in saying, nothing can deter us from our goal.
And to compensate for our lack of experience, because this is a historic, unprecedented undertaking. So we had to recruit people who are good with fundraising, people who are good with the media relations, people who are good with real estate, name it, management.
From that small cadre, the word went out and the community rallied. It was an inspiring response that snowballed. People came together and a range of imaginative fundraising campaigns were organized. At the heart of it all were the volunteers.
This project could not have come to fruition without countless unsung heroes. And volunteers from all walks of life pitching in. So we all are very privileged and we have to be extremely grateful that all these unsung heroes have converged.
They were big-hearted people, like the late Helen Liu. You would often find her at a local mall selling raffle tickets. Her persistence and patience were legendary. And she was just one of so many. The crown jewel of the fundraisers is the Dragon Ball. It began as a rather humble affair to celebrate the Chinese New Year. But like everything else in this story, it grew and grew. Today, it is one of the premier events on Toronto's social calendar.
99-point-something silver. 3,000 we have over.
Glitz and glamour, VIPs and superstars. And once again, an army of dedicated volunteers working hard behind the scenes.
Imagine we have to shuck 3,000 to 4,000 oysters, 2,000 cherry stone crabs. They are not an easy task. Running a Dragon Ball is not really an easy thing. I personally don't know any restaurant people, but then I have to knock on their doors and ask for donation and ask for the chef to come out to help us out. Very, very tough, especially when you know how restaurants operate. They won't stop until midnight. There are times that I have to really wait for them until 1 or 2 in the morning in order to be able to talk to them. Those are very tough things.
The Dragon Ball became the single biggest fundraiser for Yee Hong, and it also brought people together. It became a bridge to mainstream Toronto, and that would soon prove to be a key chapter in the Yee Hong story. Toronto in the 1980s was a very different city. The Chinese community was small and far out of the mainstream.
Yes, we had one Chinatown on Dundas Street, just between Yonge and University, and that was it.
One man who had no small role in changing that was Mendel Green, an immigration lawyer and an early Yee Hong supporter.
Oh my God, we've got 7 Chinatowns now, almost 1 million Chinese in the GTA. They have made such an incredible contribution to the community, it's just outstanding. And from an economic standpoint, in the global marketplace, they brought so much to our country.
That transformative wave of immigration began with events on the other side of the world.
It really started in about 1986, 86, 87. And it started that because I went to Hong Kong in 1985. And right after Maggie Thatcher signed the Sino-British agreement with Deng Xiaoping.
Neil Tate was working in Hong Kong for Bank of Montreal when the agreement to return the colony to China was announced, and he foresaw what was about to unfold.
And looking at the people in Hong Kong, I said, we're going to have a lot of people coming to Canada.
Meanwhile, a young municipal politician saw the change firsthand and knew Toronto had to become more inclusive.
To me, if we were going to be a city that worked, we had to involve people in all levels of government and politics and be participants, not spectators. So that kind of change was kind of fundamental to me.
Cressy soon noticed one man who was already very much involved.
There was a banquet of 1,500 people. And I remember there Joseph speaking. And it was that moment that there was something about Joseph that I said, this guy can do magic. And I said, this guy can be a confronter, but more than that, he's a connector, and he will bring people together.
And I'm quite sure with our boards, with our senior management, our frontline staff, all the volunteers working together, we would meet the challenges of today and tomorrow.
Green, Tate, and Cressy would become important allies and helped build bridges to the mainstream.
So for the first 3 years, I got your office for free to do volunteer work.
I just can't believe how it's evolved, that this was the breeding ground for one of the greatest charitable organizations that this city has.
Leo Del Zotto has done a lot to shape Toronto's skyline. One of his first big projects early on was the Village by the Grange, and he opened its doors to Dr. Wong and Yee Hong, donating an office.
It was something that anybody who understood something about bringing cultures together and giving people opportunity to build a better city would have done the same thing. Well, you have to understand, you're talking to a guy who's a child of immigrant parents. You know, it happened, my parents immigrated in the 30s. We went into the Second World War. The Italians were not the most welcome.
Leo I've known for many, many years, and he would donate the condominium to be auctioned off. I mean, who auctions off a condominium? How exciting is that?
Among those impressed by Dr. Wong's vision was legendary Canadian businessman Purdy Crawford.
Proud to be associated with such a great center. Enthusiasm, caring, loving people. The people that have come to Canada and become Canadians, I can't imagine a group that have added more to our country, made it a better place.
Neil Tate was also able to recruit Elizabeth Comper, the wife of Bank of Montreal CEO Tony Comper.
I spoke to Elizabeth and she was extraordinarily enthusiastic, extraordinarily excited. And she came on board and she called on every single person. And she was the only one of the 5 chairs that not only achieved their goal, but she exceeded it. She passed away last year, and right through to the very end. And I'm just delighted, and I think it's an appropriate thing that we're doing by renaming the Elizabeth Comper Center.
Today, we are very honored to be here to pay tribute to a remarkable woman who, in the last 25 years of Yee Hong's existence, has been helping us to realize the dream. Thank you very much.
While Elizabeth Comper was twisting arms on Bay Street, Dr. Wong was proving to be a powerful fundraiser in his own right.
I was introduced by Mendel that this is Dr. Joseph Wong, and then I learned a lot during that night. You know, I was astonished and about how they started, and I began to think that as I'm a Chinese, what shall I do?
George Wong became one of Yee Hong's greatest benefactors. Over the years, he has signed a lot of checks, a fact that he and Dr. Wong had a little fun with one year. Slowly, the money was raised. But to build a dream also means cutting through red tape, overseeing construction, and overcoming the opposition. The site for the very first Yee Hong Center was chosen. A small plot of land was purchased in suburban Scarborough, but the plan was met with stiff resistance at City Hall and in the local neighborhood. It was a classic case of the not in my backyard syndrome.
There were community opposition, not necessarily, well, some Chinese too, but many are non-Chinese residents, because I live in that area. And the city councillors was championing their opposition and say, look, listen, you know, it's not fit for a nursing home. And we have to do a lot of lobbying.
So at the very beginning, we have to ask people to support us, to help out for the rezoning. So at the very beginning, we have to go to door to ask for the signature from them.
Josephine and Michael Yoon took on the difficult job of persuading people that their new neighbor wouldn't be a threat.
Oh, when we knock at the door, most of them, they don't support us. The reason is, they said there'll be more traffic in the area, you know, for the whole area. They even worry about the depreciation of their property.
Usually they don't like us. And then after we have explained the reason why we need a nursing home, because of this, because of that, and then they get softened and give a second thought.
We did not retreat. We were not scared, because we took up the torch. And this is, I think, something that we ought always keep in mind.
Another early hurdle to clear was getting the necessary license to operate a nursing home from the Ontario government.
I was down there at Queen's Park, talking to politicians and bureaucrats, trying to convince them that it is very important for a community to take care of seniors in a culturally and language-appropriate way. They pay a lot of lip service, but at the end of the day, they all told me one thing. Ontario was very poor. At this time, we are in a deep recession. We did not have money to establish a nursing home for the Chinese Canadians. Of course, I was not satisfied with the answer. We yelled, we shouted, we almost fought. But we do it in a civilized way, but very, very emotional, no question about it. And we went to the point of showing the province that we mean business. So we chartered a few buses, bringing a few hundred seniors down to Queen's Park to demonstrate. Another one of the reasons why the bureaucrats told me that they could not do it, because they said that this is reverse discrimination if you only admit Chinese Canadians and nobody else. I went ahead and wrote to Canadian Human Rights Commission, asked them that if we organize a nursing home that admit Chinese Canadians only, whether it is an infringement on the Human Rights Code. The answer was no. They said that this is affirmative action. You're helping a community that has long been disadvantaged because of their certain characteristics, and to help them to get better services. It is not discriminating against other people. So we resolved those two problems with the bureaucrats.
Finally, construction began on the very first Yee Hong Center. Now it was time to bring in the professionals. Florence Wong was the first CEO.
It was a scary experience, right? Scary in the sense that I don't have an office, and I don't have staff. I don't know too much, about the organization. All I know is I have to start from zero. In fact, I have a sleeping bag when I have an office, right? I think 6 months or 4 months after I reported duty, I do have an office, and I started to have a sleeping bag, right?
Yee Hong finally opened its doors in October 1994. It was quickly filled, and just 2 years later, 2 new floors were added.
1.
It proved so successful that it quickly became clear that one Yee Hong Center would not be enough.
So we put in a few applications. One is to expand the original Yee Hong. Second application is to build a new Yee Hong Center in Markham. Third application is to build a brand new Yee Hong Center in Mississauga. And the fourth one is to build a 4th center in Scarborough. So I told my board, out of the 4 applications, if 1 is successful, it's okay. If 2 are successful, it would be good. 3 are successful, great, very excited. 4, never. There won't be a government so stupid to give one organization all 4 applications, right? I remember the day when we were interviewed by the panel, the government panel. They openly told us, your applications were so good, we could not turn it down. I was so surprised, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
However, the government did add a proviso. The 3 new centers would have to be built within 5 years, an unheard of pace. Meanwhile, Yee Hong was winning admirers.
And I said to him, Dr. Wong, I would love to have one of your facilities in Mississauga. They win every award. And they care, when you think of my facility in Mississauga, there are Filipinos and Portuguese. And they make sure that the food that they're accustomed to is provided.
We have a floor in our Markham Center for South Asians. We have a wing in the Mississauga Center for Filipino seniors. We have a wing in our new Scarborough Center for Japanese seniors. So I think that the generosity of this particular group, generosity of the Chinese Canadian community, extending our goodwill to other communities, really helped us to get all 4 applications through the ministry.
I sometimes still couldn't believe my eyes that, wow, it actually happened, and it's not just 1, but 4 locations, and probably still growing in the future.
Today, Yee Hong Foundation President Stephen Su is giving a delegation from China a tour. They've come to learn and see for themselves why Yee Hong has become known around the world as the gold standard for seniors' care. They aren't the first to come, and they won't be the last.
I remember my first visitor was from Newfoundland. And then, from then onwards, we got so many referrals from the ministry. Whenever people want to build a new long-term care home, they say, go to see the Chinese home, go to see Florence. Right? So I was very proud, even with the first home, that we were able to build a quality home and quality care. I think the care is what makes a difference, right?
And I think the other pride is go beyond the Chinese community, is that not only that we are leading a role model in the Chinese community. In fact, Yee Hong has become a showcase for the provincial government and even for federal government. We have an international reputation now.
It's a reputation that has been built by a staff of professionals, doctors, and dedicated nurses, like Phoebe Poon.
So I feel everyone's work in nursing home. They work in here not just for a job. Inside their heart, they have love, patience. Otherwise, they cannot work in here.
At the heart of the 4 Yee Hong centers are the long-term care facilities. Many of the residents are active and engaged, but others need special care. This innovative sound and light therapy helps calm patients with dementia.
Residents with dementia, they remember the feeling more than what they are doing or what you have said. They don't remember those very abstract things, but they remember the feeling. They remember that you are nice to them, that you greet them every day, that you play games with them, and you joke with them.
Over the course of our 20 years, we've come to some realization. As good as what we do, there is always a bigger demand for what we do. So we have to find other ways of meeting the care needs of those seniors who require assistance, but actually if they were given a choice, they would prefer to stay home.
So Yee Hong reaches out into the community, helping seniors stay at home as long as possible. But one of the biggest challenges is helping them cope with isolation and loneliness.
I asked them, what are you doing at home when your children going to work? And they said, you know what, Maria, I just counting how many cars passing by the neighborhood. You can imagine how socially isolated they are. Because sometimes when they hear the doorbell ring, they do not speak English. They will feel very scary. They don't know how to respond.
We have volunteer home visiting services that we would make sure that the seniors are not isolated and left in their apartments or houses without much opportunity for integration and contact with the community. We have Meals on Wheels services, we have supportive housing services.
We have driver going door-to-door service to pick up them at home, and then they will go to our center, and after all the program they're going back, they can have a very enjoyable day for joining different services of Yee Hong.
We have 4 active senior programs in the community, and we serve about 8,000 clients in a year, active senior program. There are a lot of programs that government doesn't fund, or government doesn't fund it 100%.
So Yee Hong must rely on donations and an incredible number of volunteers.
Yee Hong can provide such large amount of community services is because we have an army of volunteers. Every year we have about 1,200 active volunteers.
The volunteers are remarkable people, caring and compassionate people like Karen Ip. Her journey to becoming a volunteer began as she struggled to take care of her own aging parents.
In 1989, I immigrated to Toronto, and 3 years later, I brought my parents over, and they loved this place ever since. They lived on their own, very, very independent. Actually, my mom had a small stroke in 1997, but I think dementia gradually appeared. My father was looking after her, and that continued until 2005. When my father suddenly passed away. So I was able to take care of my mother and carry on with a full-time job. The courses that I took to learn about what is dementia. The McNichol Center is the place where my mother goes to the special day program. And she started in 2003 until 2013, just a few months before she passed away. But one thing I really appreciate is I was able to spend 8 to 9 years really close encounter with mother. A lot of people told me that it's very difficult, very hard work for me. I never felt that. So right now, even though mother has passed away for a year, I still continue to come and hope that I can pass on my experience to the newcomers.
we serve seniors when they first retire, when they are still very active, they can still take TTC or they can still drive, come to us. We help them to maintain an active lifestyle until a time that they can no longer stay in the community. They have to move into nursing home. So we want to provide a continuum of services.
Perhaps no one exemplifies that continuum of service over Yee Hong's 20-year history than a man who played a big part in it. His name is Hoi Tang, but everyone at Yee Hong calls him Master Tang in honor of his mastery of Tai Chi. He's 94 years old, and his apartment at Yee Hong's Evergreen Manor is filled with memories.
嗰陣時咧就係有個仔蘇都做總統嗰時，做總理嘅時候咧，就係移民過嚟呢度，家庭團聚嚟喺呢度嘅。大概好似唔記得清楚，好似50幾年前。
He met the love of his life in Hong Kong just after the war.
一見鍾情。
They married in 1947, worked hard, and when it came to retirement, they got lucky. The Tangs were among the very first residents to move into the Yee Hong Au-Chan Kam Chi Evergreen Manor 22 years ago. Evergreen is a seniors apartment complex adjacent to the nursing home. It serves more independent seniors, those who need just a little help with housekeeping and medical care.
Oh, they were happy. They were very happy.
Master Tang's daughter Helen remembers how he came to embrace life in his new home, his new community.
He's very energetic and he loves helping people. He started doing more and more, and so that's why over these 20 years he has been getting a lot of awards.
But then everything changed. In 2004, Mrs. Tang was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. They could no longer cope, and she had to move into the nursing home section for the care she now needed.
咁當然唔捨得啦，有感情啊嘛。
It was hard for my dad to part with her because mom would be staying in the nursing home, and whereas dad stays back in the apartment over at Evergreen Villa. But the wonderful thing is that he could walk over to the nursing home.
Every day, Master Tang walks down the corridor to visit her, and he knows she is slipping away.
一個人行到呢個步驟啦，好犀利啦，已經咪唔捨得啲嘢啦。
Their last thread of connection is a simple beaded bracelet. It was his wife's, and when they parted, she asked him to wear it.
見親有呢幾樣嘢喺時咧，佢係記得係我啦，唔係佢唔記得係我。
Mrs. Tang died in 2014.
That morning, I was still talking to mom into her ears. I said, "Don't have to worry about that." And strangely speaking, you know, right after what I told her, there was a teardrop coming out from her eye. Yeah. He was very depressed. He always hid himself in the room, and every now and then he would burst into tears and cry because he missed mom so much. And he refused to take part in any activities.
The principle behind our end-of-life care is we would like to maintain the residents in a comfortable and soothing environment that maintains their dignity. We also want to support their family. We would like to educate them, to communicate so that they know what to expect during that end stage of life.
Somehow, Master Tang has found the strength to carry on. He's now in the nursing home himself, and some of his old fighting spirit has slowly returned. For Helen, none of this has been easy. Yet she is grateful for the comfort and compassion that Yee Hong was able to provide.
They know the people here. Like my dad, who's been a volunteer here for over 20 years. So it's like a home. So it's like moving from one unit of your home to another unit of the home. Continuity, this part is a big thing that Yee Hong is able to provide to us.
It's a special night. Yee Hong's staff has gathered to celebrate the 20th anniversary. There's a lot of fun and games, but there's also a lot of pride.
So we started with a group of volunteers in my basement, and look at what we have today. So I would not want to miss this opportunity, this very important milestone in Yee Hong's growth, to be with you, to express my very sincere appreciation, and you have made us very, very proud.
There are challenges ahead. There is the continual need to raise money to fund its innovative programs. And another is the changing nature of Canada's Chinese community.
We face more people who speak Mandarin coming from mainland China. Actually, our program is also changing. We have more program that will take in Mandarin-speaking clients.
Furthermore, we're looking at second, third generation of Chinese Canadians who've grown to their old age here. While they may be Chinese, they're also well integrated in the mainstream, but they may like to be in an environment when they need care that still recognizes and caters to their Chinese roots. So what would that look like?
No one can predict what the next chapter of the Yee Hong story will be like. The only thing certain is that Yee Hong can face the future with confidence, a confidence inspired by the incredible success of its first 20 years.
Let's not get complacent, but let's not be too modest, because we ought to be, and rightfully, we should be very proud of ourselves, and we overcome the odds, and we step up to the plate.
Under Joseph's leadership, there's a legacy here that, the buildings, the institutions, the services are going to stay beyond our lifetime. And to me, I think that's something that it creates that sense of, continuity. I mean, I think there's a saying, we walk on the shoulders of those who come before us.
Well, it's really what I've learned from Joseph, is tenacity, a sense of humor, humility. The race is for the long run. It's not in the short. Grand dreams can be achieved. And building a grand group of people around you, those are all powerful lessons.
We are very proud to be one of the members of Yee Hong.
Every time I walk into the buildings, all the Yee Hongs, and I feel I'm proud because I did something. I'm part of it.
Well, we are very proud to be the Yee Hong volunteers, and I'm going to tell my grandson too, to pass the story on.